Welcome to the Sportscast, October 5th, 2018. Last night, I think the Patriots are back. Tom Brady broke a quarterback record last night, and they defeated the Indianapolis Colts last night. And I think the Colts and I think the Patriots are back. To join us, Jeff, welcome back to the Sportscast.
Thanks, Santiago.
Jeff,
happy to be here.
Yeah,
always.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Always good to talk. Oh, yeah.
Did you see last night's game?
Yeah, I did. And you know, it's funny. The Patriots on offense went from having no threat at wide receiver to having Josh Gordon and Julian Edelman in a hurry. You know what? A 2-week span.
Yeah.
So that's tough, man. I mean, I think it's going to take some time for Josh Gordon to feel comfortable in the offense. But Brady's great, but something he's always been awesome at is incorporating a lot of different players and spreading the wealth. And you know, aside from Gronkowski, he doesn't really force feed a lot of people. And I guess you could put Edelman in that category too. But that really changes the dynamic of their team. Now, in terms of the Patriots being back, I still thought it was a little bit of a sloppier game until, you know, they pulled away a little bit late. The defense is still an issue, I think, but we'll see. We'll see what they do when they play some of the better teams in the AFC.
Yeah, you're right. I went to bed around halftime, and at halftime, and you know that they had a good 21-3 lead. It was pretty obvious. I think they're going to win this one. And then when I woke up this morning, the Colts, you know, only lost by 2 touchdowns. Yeah, 2 touchdowns is a lot, but it was 38-24, so it was high scoring. Though we know the Patriots defense is not the best in the world or anything like that. But the Colts, I mean Andrew Luck looked pretty good last night.
I think he did. And you know, I keep waiting when I watch him play. It almost feels as though you're watching a pitcher that doesn't have a fastball. You know, he's really accurate, and he's kind of getting back to being the playmaker Andrew Luck that we remember. But on some of those throws, man, the one that sticks out to everybody waits for the deep bomb, right? The 60-yard throw. Well, arm strength isn't always about the 60-yard throw. Sometimes it's just about being able to throw cross field or get a screen out quickly. The play that sticks out to me was in the first half. I want to say the score was 14-3, and the Colts were driving, and they called the play action fake where Eric Ebron snuck out on the weak side of the formation, and Ebron was wide. I mean, just like uncovered. The play completely worked, and Luck threw it to him, and Ebron caught it, but he had to bend down and catch it at his toes and practically scoop it off the dirt. Whereas if Luck hits him in the chest, he probably gets another 10 or 15 yards. And you still see those plays pop up where it just looks like Luck doesn't quite, his arm's just not quite there yet. I'm not saying Luck's holding him back because he's still carrying the team, and the number of drops the Colts had last night was astounding. But I think he's still making his way back.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's still rusty. He didn't play for 1 season, pretty much, and I'm not sure if he played the whole season. Well, he played most of the season like the previous, but it doesn't matter. He missed all last season, and I think, it's just wait and see. Ebron had a good game. I noticed that because I'm playing against a person who has him on his fantasy, and he gave 30 points. So it's quite interesting how the Colts are shaping up. Let's talk about the Chiefs. The Chiefs had a close nail-biter against the Broncos. What were your thoughts about that game?
Yeah, to the Broncos' credit, there were 2 things about the Broncos that impressed me. One was just the effort that they played with. I mean, you could tell from the first time the Chiefs had the ball, the Broncos' mentality was, if they're going to make plays on us, they're going to earn it, and they're going to physically have to keep up with us. And I felt as though the Broncos were the more physical team pretty much the entire game. They ran the ball well. and they just uglied up the game, which is, I know we talked last week, what would the Broncos have to do to stay in the game? And that's what we talked about, and they did a good job of it. They made sure their offense was slow and kept Mahomes on the sideline. And then on defense, they were aggressive early. And, aside from, I guess Mahomes might have missed a play or two early, but I felt as though the Broncos were the first team that really flustered him a little bit. Not that he completely lost his mind. He still looked decent, but he let some plays on the field that he normally wouldn't. And that's usually a sign that you're thinking more than you're playing. So, I was impressed with the Broncos, man. I mean, I still don't think they're a playoff team or anything like that, just mostly because of Case Keenum and Vance Joseph. I just, as we said before, I just don't like that combination. I think Keenum really hurt the Broncos, and if he played a little bit better, they might have been able to build a lead that the Chiefs couldn't have come back. And then obviously it's a close game. You get into the fourth quarter, and Mahomes just made, he made plays. He made 3 or 4 throws that him and Aaron Rodgers are the only 2 guys in the NFL that can make those throws.
You think the Broncos had a bad investment with Keenum?
I mean, that's a tough one because it's kind of like, talking about the Chiefs when they signed Alex Smith. Now, I mean, I think Alex Smith's better than Case Keenum, but my point is, you bring in a guy that I don't think the Broncos, in the sincerity of their hearts, believe that they were going to chase a Super Bowl with Case Keenum. I mean, I guess there's that possibility, but I don't think that was it. But you have to at least bring somebody in that can run your offense and create the ability to win games on a week-to-week basis. What you don't want to do is just have such a barren wasteland at that position that you can't even compete. And I think the last couple of years with the Broncos, Paxton Lynch and Trevor Siemian, I mean, if you went out there and started Paxton Lynch, you might go 2-14, and you don't want to do that when you have as much talent as the Broncos have on their roster. Because the truth is, when you look at, their defense isn't as good as it was, but it still has a lot of talent. Their offense has a couple nice running backs. Their offensive line on the interior, their tackles aren't very good, but the interior is pretty good. Their receivers are good. They just have to find that trigger guy. They got to find their quarterback.
Yeah, the Broncos are paying Case Keenum for $36 million for 2 years. Obviously, it is week 4, so we don't know what's going to happen. It's pending out. It doesn't look good. That we can both agree. So we'll see what happens with the Broncos. One thing I noticed about Mahomes, he had a left hand pass. I know it was like a really quick one, but it was pretty nice, I thought.
Yeah, and the funny part about that is watching it live. So Mitchell Schwartz, who's the Chiefs' right tackle, he always does a really good job on Von Miller. And I want to say it's 4 straight games now he hasn't given up a sack to Miller. And when that play, I kept thinking to myself, not to discredit Mitchell Schwartz, because he's great. I mean, he's truly great. But you just know a guy as good as Vaughn, eventually he's going to make a play. It's just a numbers game. Eventually, someone as good as Von Miller makes a play. And when Mahomes pulled back to throw that ball, my first thought was, Miller's going to strip him from behind when he pulls back to throw. And what's crazy about it is Mahomes, in the post game, specifically said he felt Vaughn coming, and he knew that if he didn't get it out quickly, the Vaughn might be able to strip him. So the impressive part about the play isn't even necessarily that he used. I mean, the fact he used his left hand is impressive because, a lot of us can't even pick up a sandwich with our left hand.
It's true.
But, but the fact that he kind of had that wherewithal to know, hey, I've got one of the best pass rushers in the NFL and an all-pro looking to make a game-changing play, I need to switch things up a bit so he can't do that. That's pretty incredible in the moment. I mean, that's big time there.
We'll see. I mean, I'm not sure if we're living the golden days of the Chiefs, but we'll find out this weekend. They played the Jacksonville Jaguars. You and I consider them maybe the top two teams, or maybe like the top four teams in the AFC. I think it might define the AFC. I think like that game will have a clear indicator what's going on. We're talking about Kansas City, probably the best offense in the AFC, maybe in the whole NFL. Well, that's arguable with the Rams. And then you got the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have the best defense in the NFL. What do you think about this game this weekend?
I'm curious to see how the matchup plays out, because if the Jaguars had Fournette, I would really think Kansas City might be in some trouble here, just because he changes the Jaguars' offense. The one matchup I think back to is back in 2014 when the Seahawks had their unbelievable Legion of Boom. You know, they went into Kansas City, and Andy Reid really put a hurting on them. Jumped out to a big lead. It got ugly in the second half, but for the most part, the Chiefs controlled that game. You know, the Jaguars use a lot of the same defensive concepts. You could probably argue they might have a little bit more talent than the Seahawks did at that time, at least at the cornerback position. So I'm curious to see how it works out. I tend to lean towards Kansas City just because they're playing in Kansas City, and I think the defense will do just enough. And Bortles definitely isn't as bad as he was. He's improved a lot, but I did see a statistic, I believe it was last night, where his passer rating is 30 points lower on the road than it is at home. So going into Kansas City, he's gonna have to deal with the crowd noise. Even though the defense is great, I don't think they'll be able to play their typical conservative, try to win the game 17-13 method, because even against a great defense, Mahomes is at least going to put some points on the board. So, yeah, and the crazy part is the Chiefs also play the Bengals, the Patriots, and the Ravens. So when you look at that, it's so rare that it works out this way, but when you look at it, those are probably the top teams in the AFC, and they're actually, they're all going to play each other. So it really should be interesting to see how it turns out.
Yeah, it's going to be the big question of, which is better, the offense or the defense. People say defense wins all the time, but we'll see. This is Mahomes' really first test. Against a good team. Obviously, the Jaguars lost against Tennessee. I don't really look at that really closely because it is a divisional game. And Tennessee, you just never know. AFC South it's a pretty boring conference in my opinion. But then of course Jaguars coming off of a win against the New York Jets, which isn't the easy Jets. They're trying to get things going with Darnold. So there is momentum, but you're right about Bortles. He's unpredictable. Some people hate him, some people love him. There's a reason why Jacksonville gave him that contract. He might be a good leader in the locker room.
And he is an athlete. He takes off, he makes plays with his legs, he does all those things. I think Jacksonville was in a position where they didn't feel that they were able to get one of the top quarterbacks because of where they were drafting. So you hang on to Bortles because you think he can continue to grow. And I don't think Bortles is as bad as people make him out to be, but he's probably not as good as Jaguars fans think he is. So he's probably somewhere in between there,
Yeah, I agree. Well, I gotta head on to predictions because I gotta leave in a few minutes. But let's start with predictions. Ready?
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Wait, that was last night. We know that was New England. The Broncos at the New York Jets.
Yeah, I think the Broncos are actually going to have a letdown. I think they were hyped up out of their minds to play that game on Monday night. They thought they had it won, and they lost in the very end. A lot of times teams don't bounce back from that, so I think the Jets are going to win an ugly game there.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with Darnold. Green Bay at Detroit.
I like Green Bay. Detroit hasn't, I just don't think Detroit's putting it together quite yet, and Rodgers is just tough. I think it'll be a high-scoring game, a lot of both teams will throw the ball all over the place, but I'd say the Packers will win by a touchdown.
You think, like, the Lions coach, Patricia, it's just another Belichick letdown, I guess. It's just not working out.
I think it's too early to tell, but it's too early to tell. But at the same time, there are just a lot of guys that are great coordinators and not necessarily great coaches. And the other thing is, Matt Patricia was the defensive coordinator for a defense last year that got absolutely lit up.
Yeah.
So I was always a little bit curious about what the Lions saw there in terms of hiring him when his defense wasn't any good. So I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Early to tell. Miami at Cincinnati.
That has the potential to be a really good game. I lean towards Cincinnati just because, again, they're at home. And it's funny. Every time I know I've said this on Twitter too, is every time I watch the Bengals, I look at all the names that pop up. And I always find myself thinking, there can't be more than 2 or 3 teams with more pure talent than the Cincinnati Bengals. And I don't know if it's, they always seem to underperform at the end of the year. I don't know if it's a quarterback problem with Andy Dalton or if it's a head coach problem with Marvin Lewis. But boy, their roster is really good. I think the Dolphins are definitely heading in the right direction. I think they'll win plenty of games this year, but I just don't know if they're going to go on the road and beat a team as good as Cincinnati yet.
I was hearing this morning that this is Andy Dalton's best start in his career. Like, it's pretty solid so far.
Yeah, and I think the Bengals built a really nice offense around him too. I mean, AJ Green is just criminally underrated and underappreciated year in and year out. He's one of those guys that's probably open 9 out of every 10 plays, but it's not always easy to get him the ball. So, I mean, AJ Green is just awesome. I mean, he's absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
And then Giovanni Bernard can still play, and
I'll pull up like the Bengals roster. Jafar. Well, he might be offline for a bit. He might come back. You never know with these connections. It's in rural Pennsylvania, so things get a little bit rough. But I'll say my predictions for now. Broncos at the Jets. I think I'll pick the Broncos. Green Bay, Detroit, Green Bay, Miami and Cincinnati. I won't say Miami. I think Miami's going to pull off a win. And it got disconnected. Let's try to pull this off one more time with him. Sorry about that, guys.
Hello, you've reached the voicemail of Jeff Fawver.
Atlanta, Jacksonville at Kansas City. I want to pick Jacksonville. I think defense still wins championships. Atlanta at Pittsburgh. I want to say Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh has turned things around a little bit. Baltimore at Cleveland. I want to say Baltimore's good, but I think Cleveland's going to scrape it out. It's going to be a convincing win. It might be ugly. Cowboys at the Texans. I would say I'm going to pick Dallas. Washington and New Orleans. I'm going to say New Orleans. Let's give Jeff another call. Give him some fairdom. Jeff?
Hello, you've reached voicemail.
Totally. Probably his phone died. And Washington and New Orleans. I'm going to pick New Orleans. So, guys, couple games this weekend. College football. We've got Texas, Oklahoma, FSU, and Miami. Notre Dame at Virginia Tech. And Alabama at Arkansas. Big game. And also Jacksonville at Kansas City. Huge week in sports. And please don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, on iTunes, Periscope, and YouTube. Yeah, YouTube, Periscope, and iTunes are our main puppies. If you want to listen to it also on TuneIn as well. And if you're on iTunes, please subscribe and leave us a rating and a review. It will help us out tremendously. Anyways, watch some good sports this weekend. We'll be back next week on the Sportscast. Thanks for watching and also listening.